Hello, my friends. Now, in today's video, I'm going to kind of go as like a part two to the one that I just released yesterday, and that was about the spirit of antichrist, the hypocrites. Now, those ones who call themselves your friend, they are very easy to spot. Anybody could see that those people who act like this towards you, yet call themselves your friend. If you are that friend, you will know that those people are not really your friend, even if you give them every benefit of the doubt that you can. You will still know in your heart that those ones are not your friend. Yet the ones who I will talk about today, they are much harder to realize that they're not your friend. They are much harder to see because they sound good on paper. It sounds good. But these ones will tear you apart worse than that friend who is your enemy but says he's your friend, because these ones are your enemy, yet you believe they're your friend. You don't just hear them say that you're their friend, you actually believe these ones are your friends. And this is like what Jesus said to be aware of. Be aware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And I will give you the example that God has given to me to understand that difference between the left and the right hand. That difference between somebody who is doing good out of the goodness of their heart, which is out of the goodness of God, or out of the goodness of receiving the praise and authority for what they do. This is exactly how the Lord described it to me. So let's use family to describe this. And this may be very uncomfortable for some people. Maybe you yourself do these things, or maybe you yourselves are on the receiving end of these things. But in the family, you understand, like Jesus said, your greatest enemies will live in the same household as you. So let's use the family, and let's just say that I have one grandfather on the right side and one grandfather on the left side. And let's say that both of these grandfathers know that their children or their stepchildren or their in-law children are in trouble. So both of these grandfathers, they write a check out for those children under them who are in trouble. And they say, here's $400. Both of them say, here, take this and go do what you need to do with it to get yourself out of trouble. And the children, of course, being children, accept it. There's never a time in your life where you're not a child to somebody. So they will accept this $400. The grandfather on the left, he gives this $400 with his heart not set on doing what is good. His heart is set on doing what is wicked. But he gives it to you in a gesture of goodness, saying, here's this $400. I know you have a payment to make. I know you have this to do, whatever. Take this money and get yourself out of trouble. So then that person takes the money. They get themselves out of trouble. They buy what they need to buy in order to get themselves out of trouble. But then they get a call from that grandparent a couple of days later saying, well, you didn't spend that $400 on exactly what I told you to spend it on. You went and did this and did that and bought this and bought that. And that's not what I told you to do with it. I told you to go do this with it. And you didn't listen to me. So now you're in trouble. Okay, meanwhile, the grandfather on the right, he says, here's a check for $400. You take this money and you buy with it whatever you need to get out of trouble. And that's it. Here it is. So then you take that money and you indeed get yourself out of trouble. You get what you need to get. And you call that grandparent a couple days later and you say, well, gee, thanks so much for that $400. I really needed it. And the grandparent says, what $400? Did you get yourself out of trouble? Great. I don't want to hear nothing about it. The grandfather on the left gave you the money with taking authority over you to believe that he knew what you needed more in your own life than what you do. He gave that money to you knowing what his right hand was doing. The grandparent on the left, He gave you the money and let you decide what you needed for your family to get out of trouble. And he gave it to you without his right hand knowing what you were doing with it. He didn't want anything in return. The grandfather on the left, he wanted something in return, and he will hunt you down until he can get it, which is either praise or authority or both. That is the spirit of Antichrist. And there is probably nobody who will listen to me who cannot understand or knows someone like this. That they will do all kinds of good for you as long as you recognize them for it. They will do all kinds of good for you as long as you let them run your own life. They will do anything for you as long as you give them credit for doing it. Those ones, that is the spirit of Antichrist. For what does Christ say? He says, give and give freely as your Father has given to you. If I give somebody $20, I don't care what they do with that $20. I've already made up in my heart that they need that $20 for whatever they need it for, and I don't need to ask any questions. If $20 helps somebody, then it helps them. What do I care what they do with it? That's me. But if I give you $20 with a string attached to it, that's no different than a banker giving you a car with a note attached to it. You owe that banker. Have I given freely if I tell you what to do with it? Or have I given freely whenever I truly don't care what you do with it? There's two ways which people give. The one way is of the left. The one way is of the right. And you will know exactly what I'm talking about, anybody who has been in this situation, by what I say to this, because it is true. Sometimes the worst people are right by you. And sometimes the worst people appear to be the best people. You know what that grandfather on the left does? He goes and sits down in church. And he says, I just gave my son-in-law $400 this week to pay off his debts. I feel good about it. I got him out of trouble. Hallelujah, praise God. And the whole assembly stands up and claps. Well, guess what? He's received every single bit of his praise right there in that moment. Nothing is credited by God to him. As that grandfather on the right, he may go into church and sit down. He goes through sermon. People ask, did anybody do anything good this week? He sits there quietly because he does not care what anybody thinks of him. His is between him and the Lord and the person he gave it to. And in his heart, he knows why he gave it. And that's enough. He gets his praise from God. What the one wanted on the left was the praise of men and taking the authority over those under him. What the one on the right wanted was the praise of God and letting that authority go from him to somebody under him so that they can build themselves up as he has already built himself up and both build each other up under the eyes of God. One side is wicked, one side is good. You will know after you listen to this in your life who has been good to you and who has not been good to you, who appears to do good for you, but who really does good for you. Things like this woman here that we see on this another Breitbart article. This is a Portland mugshot of somebody that was arrested for out there rioting and doing all these things. Just look at her. She has her face covered with marker. She looks demon-possessed because she is. You know this woman is wicked. You don't need to think twice about it. But let's look at something else. This Oregon Governor Brown, she's saying that it's going to take time to eradicate the racism that's in our systems. She's talking about how everything that's happened in Oregon and all the civil unrest, it's because of white racism from the beginning. It's because of all these problems that are here and we just need to bring it down in order to build it back up. Here's what she looks like. She just looks like a normal woman, right? Because she is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She is harder to spot. Compare this woman on my screen to this woman on my screen. You know which one's evil. You can easily see that. But you don't recognize that both are evil. Because this woman in purple, she hides her evil under something that looks holy. Now let's go further with this, and you might start to get into some stuff that'll really make you uncomfortable here in a second. These are all on my screen here, Fox News anchors. Fox News. Do you think God may have a point there just by calling it Fox News? Do you think there might be something here more for you to see? These people look wonderful on the outside. As a matter of fact, they are known primarily as the makeup kings and queens of all the news industry. Their anchors look the best out of anybody, and there are some good looking anchors on this channel, let me tell you. And they will all speak to you about good things. They will tell you how good they are and how they know the right answers to things. They are all hypocrites dressed up as wolves in sheep's clothing, because they do make some good points of truth. But underneath of it, what do they want? Do they want the truth to get out there, or do they want you to praise them for giving you the truth? That's how you can look at Fox News. CNN, they're evil. They're like this woman. This is what CNN looks like. This woman right here on my screen. This is what Fox looks like right here on my screen. They're much harder to tell, aren't they? NFL this week, they have Black Lives Matter literally painted on their goal lines. They're going out playing the Black National Anthem. They're sitting down or their arms crossed for the American National Anthem, but all standing for the Black National Anthem. And people like this Chris Collinsworth, who is a big-time reporter for, I believe, NBC television or whatever it is, he says, I stand behind these players 100%. What they're trying to do is create positive change in this country, which is long overdue. So what is he getting from this post? Well, he's getting the praise of all these people for doing wickedness. He's saying, here's your $400. You spend it on what I tell you to spend it on, and then you praise me for it afterwards. That's Chris Collinsworth. He's giving the world something wicked, but dressing it up like a beautiful present on Christmas morning. This is what Fox News does, the same exact thing. This is what all media does that's on your television, to the same extent. Some appear more evil and wicked than others, but like your grandfather, the intention is the same, as they're all on the left. Every one of them. Their praise comes from man, not from God. Let's go further into this. NFL's cluelessness on Black Lives Matter exposes fake team unity and not caring a lick for players. This is someone who sees the truth. This person, Jane McManus is her name. I have no idea who it even is or anything, but this person's just telling you what it actually is, that this is nonsense and people are eating it up because they want to feel good themselves. It's not because it's actually doing good to any black lives. It's because they want to feel good themselves, like they have done something good, but they've done nothing. Just like your grandfather on the left wrote you a check for $400, believing himself to do the good thing, which actually is the good thing, you needed the $400, but then he took it all away from you by signing your name to a contract instead of giving it freely. That's what the media has done with sports. There was a 16% decline this weekend watching the football games on television. A 16% decline. Fox News this morning praising football, talking all about how it's a new season of sports and football. Yeah. From the moment you turn on football, they tell you and they show you they hate you for being conservative, that they hate you for not following their lies. And people still tune into it. Because they're like a dog who has grown up their whole lives being kicked. They keep looking for their master that one time to just pet them. But that dog dies before he ever gets pet. These people are never going to pet you. These people hate you. They show you that they hate you. They tell you that they hate you. And by their works do they hate you. Yet only 16% of Americans are able to say that's enough. That tells you right there how lost this country is. That whenever people know you hate them, you know that you're their enemy, you still keep coming back to your enemy, hoping for something good to come out of it. That's how lost this country is. It should have been 70% of people didn't tune into football last weekend. And then this weekend, it should be 99% of people not tuning into it. Yet you'll probably see an incline in the ratings. Because people in this country and all over the world are so used to being beat down, believing they owe somebody something. Because that is the system that the beast has put out there for you to follow. Everything you do, every debt you owe it to somebody or something, instead of giving it freely, which is Christ's system. Christ's system, you give it freely and you receive it freely, and you give back when you receive. This system of the beast, it gives you freely to do what it tells you to do, and then when you don't do what it tells you to do, it takes it away. Or even if you do what it tells you to do, it then has its authority over you. Everything this whole system of the beast does is owe it to the one who was richer. It is by definition antichrist, because it puts a price tag on debt. And Christ said to have no debt at all. It is by its own definition antichrist. But yet it comes looking like a sheep, so you don't recognize it. But what God has done over these 4 years is take that sheep and make them appear as a wolf to all who have the eyes to see. And believe me, those who have the eyes to see will see this. These people are just as wicked as the people who you know are wicked, but they're trying to cover it up. Now we're going to get even more into something that might be offensive for you. Here's Catholics. This is the Pope. This is their services. This is their churches. This is what Catholics do. This is all they do. They have these big grand services. Most every Protestant out there will say, well, yeah, the Catholics are antichrist. They're against God. And just like Jesus said in the book of Revelations, you have that going for you. These people are wicked. Here's some Protestant churches. Here's Martin Luther and the big Protestant Reformation that came from the Catholics. This is their kind of settings and their kind of churches. Is this better than Catholic churches? Absolutely. God gives you credit for that in Revelation. But what is it in the end? Here's just some more examples of what churches, modern day churches, look like. What is it in the end? What are these online ministries we see popping up everywhere? Where did all of these online ministries and all of these Protestant ministries, which most of the online ministries claim their allegiance to, where have most of them all come from? Right, here's the tree. The Catholics. That was your tree. They've been around the longest. Nobody even tries to debate that. The Catholic is the root of that tree. We go into Protestants, and then we get to these online ministries. Where did they come from? Well, you'll say, well, of course they came from the Revolution. They came from the great splitting of the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformation. And we got something better. We got the Protestants. And then all these online ministries, most of them are run by people who went to Protestant churches their whole life. That's where it came from. But what is the tree? Because God doesn't tell you anything about what something comes from other than where it began. Where did a Protestant church begin? Well, it began as a Catholic tree. And then it split in half. And when a tree splits in half, does it become two trees? Or is it still the same tree? The Protestants were rebels. They rebelled against the Catholic Church. A good thing. They should have. The Catholic Church was always known to them as this grandfather on the left who I've been talking to you about. The Catholic Church always wanted something in return. It never gave anything freely. So they rebelled against it. What do you see these rebellions happening in Portland and California and all these places out west? What do you see in these rebellions in the cities? Well, they're understanding that the government isn't giving them everything for free, so they're rebelling against the government. The Protestant church rebelled against the Catholic church. But yet, what tree did both come from? Both came from the same tree, and Jesus tells us very specifically that a bad tree can never produce a good fruit. So all of those trees get cut down and thrown into the fire whenever the Lord returns. All of those trees. Because they're all formed off of the same original tree. And this is what people cannot understand or even rationalize, because they will justify it because so many look like a sheep but are inwardly a wolf. And you cannot get over the fact that the whole world is against you. Not just a couple of people, not just 1,000 people, not just those people. The whole world is against you. It creates this illusion around you as though this people is good and this people is bad, when both people are bad. Rebels. Christ tells us about the beaten dog. He said, my people will be trampled underfoot. We are. The people of God, we are nothing. Everybody tramples us underfoot. The Catholics hate us. The Protestant hates us. The government hates us. Everybody hates us. The whole world tramples us under our feet because we stand up for the truth in a sea of lies. You can look at Numbers talking about rebels. Deuteronomy talks about rebels. Genesis 13, though, perhaps the first instance of it. Now the people of Sodom were extremely wicked rebels against the Lord. So what is the spirit of rebellion? It's a spirit of rebellion against God, because here's what happened first in Genesis 13. That means to this very day the tree of rebels comes from Genesis 13. Anybody who rebels is against God, period. That means Protestants who rebelled were just as much against God as the Catholics. But through their Reformation, like we go through in the beginning of the book of Revelations, where God meets with all 7 of the churches, he says, you do this wickedly, but you have this going for you. That's what the Protestants do. They still come from the same wicked tree, but they hate the Nicolaitans, the Catholics. At least they hate them the same as God does. So though they may have received $400 from that left-leaning grandfather, at least the grandfather said, take 200 of this and pay it on this bill, and then take that 200 and do whatever you want with it. You make do with the rest of that 200. I only gave you $200. You take the $200 I give you extra, and you buy whatever you want with that. Well, the Protestants did exactly that. They took and they formed their own things out of rebellion, and half of it was good. Half of it was done the right way. Because they never realized that from the beginning they rebelled against God, just like Sodom in Genesis 13. A tree that is bad will never produce a good fruit. It can produce a better fruit after you trim the tree down and get it all beautiful and take care of it. It can produce a better fruit, but it's never going to be good. Isaiah, another big one on rebels. Your rulers are rebels, friends of thieves. They all love grass, chase the bribes, and do not defend the rights of the fatherless, and the widow's case never comes before them. This is like the United States government. Look at the House of Representatives. Look at the Senate. Neither one of them, because of their own election political reasons, would give help to the American people for a second stimulus check. Neither one of them would do it. All because both of them are fighting against each other to get elected. It's the same as the Protestants fight against the Catholics. There's no difference. The antichrist spirit is in the whole world, and it's in religion, and it's in government, the same as it's in your daily life. You can't escape it. A rebel is a rebel, and a rebel is always against God because it tries to do good while doing evil to get there. And we know that can't work out. Daniel talks about rebels. Near the end of their kingdoms, when the rebels have reached the full measure of their sin, an insolent king skilled of intrigue will come to the throne. This is what's happening next. This is what's happening in Daniel. It's going to come very soon. Someone will unite all the rebels into believing in their cause, and then they will be destroyed by the army of God. Because anybody who rebels, anybody, no matter what kind of rebellion it is, rebellion comes not from God, but from the Antichrist spirit. So let's get further involved in all of these things that might offend you. Let's look at someone like this that's on my screen. Paul Begley. Every single video you pull up of his, the first 5 minutes of that video are him trying to get you to buy gold or to do something to prepare. Look at what God has made him into look like. Just look at my screen. He puts these big dark glasses over him. He paints his face with some kind of glow, puts a big red hat over him. God literally has turned him in his own videos into looking like that of a demon, because this man has no truth in him. In everything he does, he says, here's your $400, and I'm going to write down on this piece of paper so you can check it off exactly what you do with that $400 to help you. I'm going to tell you what to do with it, and you're going to do it. And then we'll all be happy. That is that kind of man, and that is what most of these online Protestant ministries have become. Most of them have some kind of money attached to them. That if you want to get the real information, you got to go to my Patreon, or you want to do what God does, go buy some gold, go do something like that. These people, God is going to not only humiliate, but they will seek death and will not find it. And that is many of these online ministries as well that come in the same way that he is. They come looking like sheep. These false prophets, they keep telling you things that are going to happen or that they will happen, and those times keep passing by, and then they tell you another prophecy that doesn't happen, and then more time keeps passing by, and another one, and you still keep believing it the entire way through because you're like a dog that has been nothing living a life except being kicked by everybody who you have ever known. You've never heard the truth. Most people in the world are like this. Some people on Fox News probably are and will be saved, like Tucker Carlson, Lou Dobbs, for instance. These people that do tell the truth and they try their hardest to get it out there. Even though they live within a system of evil, they try their hardest to do what is right from that system. They probably will be saved. Because in every system of Satan, God also puts his people into it. In these online ministries of Satan, there are people amongst them who are gods. And there are people amongst them who preach and talk and don't even know yet who they are. I was one of those people for at least a year in the beginning of my walk. Didn't know who I was yet. God didn't give me everything I needed in order to see it yet, because salvation is a process. You're refined by fire. It doesn't just instantaneously happen. Your salvation may instantaneously happen, but your process of understanding knowledge and truth, that comes over time. Many of these people are not doing the wrong thing, so to speak. They're doing what they know, living in a system that has trampled them under their foot their whole life. But here's the difference. Whenever Paul was released from prison by God, he opened his prison door. All the rest of the prisoners were let loose. They followed Paul or they didn't follow Paul. This is what God's going to do for all of these people. Everybody's going to get let loose out of that prison cell. But who's willing to follow God at that time? Or who's going to keep following people like this that's on my screen? That's the decision they're going to make. The good ones who just have not seen any good their whole life, because the only thing they know is the spirit of Antichrist, God is going to take your shackles off. But like one left, one taken. One will be grinding in the mill, one will be in their house, one will be taken, one will be left. That's this time. You're either going to go with God and know in your heart it's God and go with it, or you're going to keep looking back at the spirit of Antichrist when you see the spirit of God, because you don't want to escape that spirit of Antichrist. It has you sucked too far in. You want to stay with it, and you believe that is the one that's right. When it was the Spirit of God who released you from the prison that the spirit of Antichrist trapped you in. That's going to be the decision for all of us when that day comes. And this time, it's all elevated. It's all coming so quickly. One thing to the next, God is pouring it out there like a river. Right now is the time. It's not tomorrow. It's not the day after. It's right now. Take a look in a mirror at yourself and see these things that you have done. See the things that people have done and said to you. And determine with you, that mirror, and with God, whether those things were right or wrong. Whether it was a lie or a truth. Because everything that is a lie is the spirit of Antichrist. And if you've only known lies, ask for that which is true, which is the Spirit of Christ. And look at yourself in a mirror and see your own wickedness, and God will give that to you. Today is the day, not tomorrow. The day is coming where justice will flow over this land, and people will just know it when it comes. See 1 Timothy 1:9. That is, if he understands that the law is not intended for righteous people, but for lawbreakers and rebels, for ungodly people and sinners, for those who are unholy and irrelevant, for those who kill their fathers, their mothers, or other people. When you understand that everybody who rebels is of that spirit, then you will know not to rebel. And you will follow God, because God is the authority over you. And nobody else who claims to have authority over you, nobody else who has brought you into debt has authority over you. God has authority over them all, and you are under him. If you will just submit in that moment to seeing a spirit different than the spirit of Antichrist and wanting to run to it, in that moment you will be saved. Anybody who is a rebel on any circumstance in the world, whether it be religion, whether it be the politics, whether it be government, whether it be your own family, anybody who is a rebel is against God. And let me tell you that most every single one of them don't even know it. Neither do those who are rebelling realize that they're a rebel, and that it all started in Genesis 13. It all started against God. It all started the moment that Eve did not listen to God in Genesis. It all started way back at the beginning of humanity. The first rebellion leads to another, and every other rebellion after that leads to more of it. You know what the spirit of Christ is? That the spirit of Antichrist is not? It is submissive to God. You will look all around you in the world and see nothing but rebellion. The person who you see who is not in rebellion, that is one who is your friend. God bless.